All right, so as I was saying, in the 7th grade, like I was the best basketball player in the country. In the 7th grade, I'm picking the ball off the rack and I'm going like this. So my dad's thinking that what you should do is you should dribble to the right, and then so he had me in the backyard, and you should spin, and then become sideways like that. But he didn't realize that the reason why I shot sideways is because of how I moved into it, stepping like that and then shooting, and then that makes you sideways. Or if you do dribble to the right, you'll bring it back to the left and do that, or you'll hop with your right leg and go back like this. Yes, some players like Kobe does do this, but my dad wanted me to spin into it, but Kobe doesn't spin. Kobe stops like this, and he stops with his left foot in front of his right, and then he jumps, and then he turns, and he shoots. But my dad wanted me to be like, spin, and he wanted me to pick the ball off of the rack right here, and spin, and go sideways. No. So that's why my shot got so messed up. So, like I said, in the 7th grade, you know, before this, I was the best, considered by some of the best shooter in the country, one of the best players in the country. But then I'm picking the ball off of the rack and I'm spinning, or I'm picking the ball off the rack and I'm shooting square. Because if you pick the ball off the rack, your left foot's going to be in front of your right, because as I mentioned, you pick the ball off the rack and you step it straight forward, because you can't, if you're picking the ball off the rack, you can't go like this, or you can't be like I said, I would, a lot of times when I would play, I would be stepping back and I'd catch it, right leg back, and then step out, and then I'd be sideways, and the rim's right there, right? But if you're picking the ball off of a rack, you can't do that. You pick the ball off the rack and you're stepping like this, so your left foot's gonna be in front of your right. Now I could be like Kobe and jump and turn like this and become sideways, but that's not an accurate shot. So the dribble to the right is the most inaccurate shot. Good shooters dribble to the left and go like that. They dribble to the left and bring the ball out and then go like that. Or they'll bring the ball out like this and go like that. So my dad didn't know that. My dad wanted me to, so my dad wanted me to, like I said, Luka Doncic, he'll go like this and he stops like this, and then he steps back and goes like this. I did the same thing when I was younger. I would catch it and do that. But apparently my dad talked to my friend Malik's dad, Kenny, who's P. Diddy's bodyguard, and Kenny told me he wanted me to start going like this. Yes, you could do that, but it's an inaccurate shot. Most good shooters will dribble to the left and then go like that, or dribble to the left and then left foot out like that, and then they'll be sideways. But picking the ball off the rack, I'm going like this. It's gonna make my left foot go in front of my right. My dad didn't know that. My dad tried to artificially make me, he thought if I would just pick the ball off the rack and be sideways and shoot form shots, that would make me a good shooter. No, it's all about how you move into the shots. So in other words, my dad destroyed my shot. My dad destroyed my shot. I was considered one of the best in the country. My dad destroyed it. Told me to do the wrong thing. So at that point, like I said, but my grandpa would later say, he'd be like, it wasn't to shoot away Ryan, because I wasn't allowed to blame my dad, because I wasn't allowed to blame. Because my grandpa would be like, if you're in the flow, you never blame, you take responsibility. So I wasn't allowed to blame my dad, so I would be like, it wasn't my fault, Grandpa, it was a shoot away. But ironically, I always saw my grandpa as a victim blamer. She'd be like, it wasn't a shoot away, it was your software. It's because you're playing against bigger, better players. So he'd say he's not blaming me, but he's really blaming me. He'd say, I'm not blaming you, I'm blaming your software. It was your consciousness. You could upgrade your software. No, it was the shoot away machine. But, my grandpa would be like, it wasn't a shoot away machine, it was because you were playing against bigger, better players. But then I would bring up, I'd be like, Grandpa, it was in the 7th grade. That's when the fighting started to happen. I remember before the first day of 7th grade, I was screaming, like my dad was yelling at me, Ryan, shoot sideways. And I started to scream because I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what my dad was even talking about. Because like I said, I just always shot. I never thought. So I screamed. And I remember, so this is when the fight started to happen. So I'm in the 7th grade. So if my grandpa be like, oh, you're playing against bigger, better players. No, in 7th grade, I wasn't playing against bigger, better players. I was playing against people my size who I was better than. And even when I was a freshman in high school, I was a starting point guard on varsity. I was bigger and better than the players. It wasn't my fault. It was a shoot-away machine messed me up. So if it wasn't for the shoot-away machine, I would have been a star. So, but anyways, so my grandpa would be like, oh, wasn't that? That's one thing that's important. Another thing, my grandpa wanted to be like, yeah, my mom and dad wanted to make my sister Leah into the wonderful one. And I tried to tell my grandpa, I was like, Grandpa, when I was younger, I remember I went to the soccer game and my mom was like, Leah sucks. She thinks too much. Ryan never thinks. My mom and dad love me. They're like, Ryan never thinks. He's amazing. And they loved me and they hated Leah. But then, like I said, around 8th grade, my mom was going to my games. My mom was like, before at one of the games in 8th grade, my mom was like, you know, the coaches for varsity came to the game, and my mom was like, you know, Ryan's not going to play on varsity shooting like that, is he, Paul? Is that why you're so mad? And my dad was all mad. He was all upset because I didn't shoot well. But again, I was shooting well. The only way I was shooting well was when I would step, because of the shoot-away machine. When I would pick the ball from the left side of the rack, I would step like this, and it made my left foot go in front of my right, my left foot pointed toward the rim, which is the opposite of how I shot when I was younger, when I would catch it and go like this, or I would catch it and jump back and then step to the left and then shoot and be sideways. Or I'd catch it like this and step to the left and be sideways. So, but when I picked the ball off the left side of the rack, I would step with my right leg, left leg, and then my left foot would be pointing out, my right leg would be like this, and then I would be sideways. So this became my go-to shot. So in that game, I scored like 30 points, but a lot of my shots, I would step like this and shoot. Whereas before, I always shot like this. But I couldn't shoot like that, picking the ball off the rack, because if I do that, then I'm gonna hit the rack. That's why I had to step like this, and that made me shoot wrong. But at the time, I didn't know that. But my dad didn't realize that. My dad was like, well, we'll just do this. You just pick the ball off the rack and just spin sideways. Like, and that's so stupid. I can't believe how stupid my dad was. So, it's sad. It's sad my dad was an idiot. So, my dad was yelling at me. He's telling me, you know, shoot sideways, what's wrong with you? He didn't realize it's because I'm picking the ball off of the rack. So then my mom was like, you're not gonna play varsity shooting like that, you know. So my mom's upset with me, my dad, and so my mom's thinking, you know, my mom always loved me. Like I said, my mom did everything for me. I never did anything. Like I said, I was treated like a prince. My uncle would later say, my uncle was like, you know, your parents thought you were gonna play in the NBA, and then you ended up being so good. And like my grandpa too. My grandpa was like, yeah, you know, my grandpa, they lived in Kauai, so they weren't a part of this. So, you know, they're like, yeah, you know, my grandpa's all mad at me because he's like, you know, your parents never taught you how to do anything. And this is the thing. Later, my grandpa wouldn't be, I'm going to get into this. My grandpa would be like, well, Ryan really wants his independence. But the thing was, no one ever taught me anything. Because my mom and dad did everything for me. Because my mom and dad treated me like a prince. Because I was so good at basketball and everything. I never once had to do any chores. I never once had to cook or clean. I never once had to do anything. I just played basketball. But then, when things got bad and I was thrown to the side, then my grandpa's like, well, Ryan really wants his independence. And my mom was like, okay, yeah, make him independent, kick him out of our lives. Let's abandon him. But they abandoned me, and I didn't know how to do anything. Because they never taught me how to do anything. So it's the worst of the worst parents you could ever believe. What they did to me was the worst thing you could ever imagine. So like I said, I was the best basketball player in the country. But then my dad's mad at me. You're shooting square. My mom, and then like I said, my freshman year, I was a starting point guard on varsity. My dad didn't go to the first game because my dad didn't think I was gonna play varsity because my shot was messed up. But then I became the starting point guard on varsity. And then my dad goes to all my games. My dad's at all my games, and he's sitting there. And like my whole life, my dad goes to every one of my games. But I'm playing really bad. So my mom goes to my first game, and my mom's like, after the game, she's like, Ryan, you're playing terrible. Shoot, you're a scorer, you're a shooter. What's wrong with you? You shoot the ball, make your shots. What's wrong with you? You can't handle the pressure. So my mom is yelling at me, like, because my mom's thinking if she makes me, you know, she's trying to light a fire up my ass or something. Like, if I'm angry at him, I'm gonna kick him into gear. I'm gonna kick him into gear, and I'm gonna, you know, his head's in the wrong place. I'm gonna fix him. She didn't know it was a tragedy. I was going to be shooting bad no matter what because I was practicing picking the ball off of the rack, which is going to make me shoot bad. So my mom's like, you know, you're shooting terrible. What's wrong? You can't handle the pressure? You can't. So later, like I would say when I discovered the quadrant model, my mom would be like, oh, you're schizophrenic. And then my mom would tell me, she said, and that's what happened to you when you were younger with your shot. You became schizophrenic and you became mentally ill because you couldn't handle the pressure and you fell apart. That's not what happened. What happened was the shoot-away messed up my shot, and then my mom and dad acted like fucking insane idiots. So then my mom was like, yeah, what's wrong with you? You need to get your head together. You're shooting terrible. You know, you're a shooter. You're a scorer. What's wrong with you? Get your head together. my dad started yelling at my mom. My dad was like, Marla, he's playing fine, because I was a starting point guard on varsity. Yeah, dribbling-wise, I'm doing great. So that's the other thing. My grandpa was like, well, what happened was, Ryan, you were playing against bigger, better players, and you got frustrated, and then you got angry, and then you took your anger out on your dad, and that's why your dad started beating you up. That's not what happened. What happened was the shoot away messed up my shot, and then my dad started, and I'm going to get to that. So then, like I said, my freshman year, my mom's yelling at me, what's wrong with you? You're shooting terrible. And then my mom's like, I'm never going to go to any of your games anymore. I'm too embarrassed. You suck. So my mom never went to any more of my games. Then my dad's going to my games. Like I said, I'm starting point guard on varsity as a freshman. I start every game. We win the CIF championship. But like I said, my shot's terrible. But why? It wasn't my fault. It was because I was practicing picking the ball off the rack, which would make anybody's shot terrible, let alone someone who's so unconscious like I was. The thing about me, which made me so spectacular, which is the paradox, which is the irony, is I was so spectacular because I was so unconscious. But because I was so unconscious, when I'm picking the ball off the shoot away rack, I'm not aware of what it's doing to my shot. And I don't know how to fix it. And my dad's the one who's telling me, your shot looks terrible. I don't know that. I don't know my shot looks terrible because I'm an unconscious player. So it's a tragedy what happened. So I'm picking the ball off of the rack. I'm moving into the shots, to shoot the ball, but I'm doing it incorrectly because of shoot away. So then, like I said, my freshman year, I'm the starting point guard varsity. We win the CIF championship. But then going into 10th grade year, I sprained my ankle, and then I wasn't the starting point guard for the 10th grade. And my dad got so pissed. My dad was like, he's like, if I go to any of the games, I'm going to kill the coach, because he was so mad at the coach because I wasn't the starting point guard. Because he was like, you played well your freshman year, and for him to take your starting spot, that's messed up. So, and this is an interesting thing. Like, my grandma would later be like, yeah, I know what happened. What happened was, you had an evil coach, a stupid coach, and that led to problems, and that's why the problems happened. So everyone wants to blame everything, and I'm trying to tell everybody, it wasn't the fucking coach. It wasn't, everyone's trying to blame all the stupid wrong reasons. It wasn't the coach. It was the shoot-away machine, and it was my dad telling me to do the wrong thing. But my grandma was like, oh yeah, it was a stupid coach, and he took your starting spot, and that led to all the problems. It wasn't the coach. The coach was right to take my starting spot. I was shooting bad because it's a shoot-away machine. It wasn't my fault. But so I lost the starting spot, but my shot's terrible. This is my sophomore year. But like I said, then the first game, my sophomore year, I made 4 3-pointers against OJ Mayo. And then my dad was all like, said, I'm never going to go to any games because I'm so pissed at the coach. But then my dad was like, he went to the next game. And that's when I started to realize my dad's just superficial. He just cares about how he looks. And that's the thing is, like, the ironic thing was I was amazing. I was always scoring 30 points a game, but my dad didn't record my games because he was so scared of me playing bad. And he didn't want to make me nervous. So I was scoring 30 points a game. If I had the videos, it would help me so much, but my dad never recorded because he didn't want to make me nervous. And also because he couldn't watch and record at the same time. He loved watching me play so much. So, but my dad wanted me to be so good, so bad. And he fucked it up. He got the shoot-away machine, and then he told me to do the wrong thing. If he would have just left me alone and just passed to me and just been chill, everything would have been great. But he screwed things up. And you're going to see what he's done to me, what my family has done to me is the most pure evil you can ever imagine. My story will show the most evil you can ever imagine. So I'm picking the ball off the rack, I'm shooting wrong, and then my dad's like, I'm never going to go to your games because the coach took your starting spot. I'm going to kill him. If I ever see the coach, I'm going to kill him. So, but then then the first game, I make 4 3-pointers against OJ Mayo, and then my dad's like, ooh, and then my dad starts going to all my games again. But I'm still shooting bad. Because of shoot away. So then my dad goes to the game, but then I'll be shooting bad, and then my dad won't go to the next few games. And then my dad won't, but I'd be like, Dad, can you help me fix my shot? Can we shoot? And my dad'd be like, no, it's no use. I can't help you anymore. You suck now. And I'd be like, Dad, I need your help. So this is when the abuse started happening. Right when I lost the starting spot, the first time my dad ever hit me, we were in the backyard, and I remember I was picking the ball off the rack. This is right when I lost my starting spot, and I'm stepping forward, and then my dad started yelling at me, you're shooting with your left foot in front of your right. You're shooting square. So I'm going like this, and my dad starts, and my dad says, fuck it. He says, I give up. He says, I give up. You suck. I give up. I can't help you anymore. And he goes inside. But in my mind, like I said, I didn't even know my shot was bad. My dad was the one who was telling me. Like I said, I was so good because I never thought. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on. And my dad's telling me my shot looks ugly and my shot's terrible. So I'm like, Dad, please, I need your help. And my dad's like, no, I can't help you anymore. You suck. I tell you to shoot sideways and you shoot square. He didn't know it was because of his shoot away rack. So I'm like, Dad, please, I need your help. Come on, 15 more minutes. And then my dad says, ask me again, I'm going to fuck you up. I'm like, Dad, come on. Then my dad grabbed me, threw me to the ground, and this is when the abuse started happening. He gets me in a headlock, and he starts hitting my head into the ground. He's like, you're going to ask me again? You're going to ask me again? And then he's bashing my brain. He's bashing me. And I ended up being abused for the rest of high school. But because like I said, then my dad would go, but then I make 4 3-pointers against OJ Mayo. So then my dad was like, ooh, Ryan's playing good. So then you see, my dad wasn't going to go to any of my games. But he claimed because I'm mad at the coach, he took your starting spot. All right, and I'm going to kill the coach. And if I can't go to your games, because if I go to your game, I'm going to kill the coach. But really, he just was embarrassed because I wasn't the starting point guard and I wasn't playing good because of the shoot away machine, which he was the one who got. So then, but then I play good, and then my dad goes to my next game. But then I play bad, and then my dad's all sulking, and he's like, he's all mad, and he's sulking. And but I'd be like, Dad, can we shoot? Can you come out in the backyard and shoot with me? And sometimes my dad would. But then he'd go out and he'd be like, oh, you're shooting terrible. You're shooting square. What's wrong with you? You're shooting square. And then that's when my dad started having me do this. So then my dad was like, Ryan, you're shooting square. Just pick the ball off of the rack. So here's the rack. Pick the ball off of the rack and just go stand like this and shoot. So I'd be in the backyard and I'm picking the ball off the rack and I'm standing like this and I'm shooting over and over again like this. And he say, stick your left foot forward and your right foot to the side and just shoot. And now you'll be sideways. Because like I said, when I picked the ball off the rack, I was going like this and I'm shooting square because of how I'm moving into it. I couldn't move into it like I did before where I would get passes and I'd step back like this. And that makes me shoot sideways, right? You know? But because I'm picking the ball off the rack, I'm going to shoot like this. So then my dad was like, okay. So my dad was like, just pick the ball off the rack and just put your left foot forward and your right foot, and then shoot like this, and then you'll shoot sideways. So I'm in the backyard and I'm going like this over and over again. So then I'm in the games. This is my sophomore year, and I'm catching the ball and I'm going like this. I'm catching the ball and going like this. So of course I'm going to be shooting bad. So I'm going like this, and my dad's like, yeah. So I pick the ball off the rack all the time, and then I'm stepping like this. And I'm shooting. So then in the games, like I said before, I would catch passes and I would step back. And then shoot, right? But now every time I'd catch a pass, I'd catch it and I'd run straight forward and I'd shoot. Because that's how I was practicing picking the ball off the rack. So my dad is telling me to do the exact wrong thing. Now, what's ironic is it's the exact wrong thing. Because before, the reason I shot sideways too was my left foot was always pointed out. And yes, this foot would be like this, right? And this foot would be more toward the rim. But it's because of how I moved into it. But my dad, this foot would always be pointed out, my left foot. But then my dad was having me go like this foot pointed forward and this foot like this. So, because he's thinking, then you'll be sideways. You'll be sideways. But like I said, if it wasn't for the shoot away machine, none of this would have happened. But when I was sideways before, my left foot would be pointed like this and I'd be like this. This foot toward the rim. So my dad completely destroyed me. So, and then like I said, so I'll get into more about what happened in a minute.